Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Goodman, Director of Marketing and Development for the YMCA of Northwest Louisiana. And we're here at 318 Latino Studios for Shreveport-Bossier, my city, my community, my home. And I guarantee you're going to learn something today. Our very special guest is Danielle Richard. Danielle, great to have you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm going to hop in. So Danielle, I put you in the same category with previous guests like Mack McCarter and LeVette Fuller as one of the great thinkers about community that we have. And I want to nerd out today with you talking about and looking at our community. But let's start here. Let's just level set for a second. You grew up in Franklin Parish in Winnsboro, Louisiana. So tell me a little about growing up in Winnsboro.
Oh, well, it's kind of a unique upbringing. And it's kind of interesting. At the time, I thought it was just the most boring thing ever. But once you get out of it and look back, you start to see all of the good things about it that you learn to appreciate. But at the time, we were only about 5,000 people. It's really tiny, really rural. And to do anything, you really had to drive 45 minutes to get to Monroe. Monroe was going to town for us, right? So doctor's appointments, going to the movies, getting a part at a big box store or something for construction at Lowe's, right? Like all of that's a 45-minute drive away. So when I went off to college, I knew that was not what I wanted to go back to. It turned out to be one of those things that I'm really glad I grew up there and have such great memories and connections. All of my family still lives there now. So, holidays and things like that, we're always going back. But I'm very thankful that a place like Shreveport exists for me to live today.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Winnsboro is the parish seat, right?
It is, yeah.
Of Franklin Parish.
Yeah, but, the parish seat, we had the high school. My graduating class was about 88 people. And when I first started dating my husband, who's from Shreveport, it kind of took me by surprise. People would ask what high school you went to as a way to connect to friend groups and that sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, I just went to the high school. There's not one to choose. How do you mean, which high school did you go to? So that was kind of a cute introduction to bigger city life.
And do you remember, I remember either hearing in an interview you gave or something I read about you, you were saying, it's interesting where I grew up, growing up in Winnsboro, that it took me 45 minutes to do anything. And then I moved to Dallas and it took something.
Yeah, our daily commute was 45 minutes, right? When James and I got married, I drove north for about 20 minutes. He drove south for 45 minutes to get to jobs. And it felt like we were, in another state, basically, and then come back home in the middle at night. And so it was like, wait, I thought I moved away from driving 45 minutes to get to everything. Why can't I just get to work here already? So that was one of the big reasons that we looked into moving away from Dallas once we got married and started to look at buying a house and settle down and that kind of thing. And
kind of an interesting or powerful grass isn't always greener.
Exactly.
Revelation for you.
Yeah. And it was kind of strange. I mean, Dallas has everything you can imagine. And we had so much fun, like concerts and professional basketball games. And, they've got they've got everything. And music groups would come to Dallas on purpose, right? Which was all very fun. But if your day-to-day experience isn't better than, another location, then it just didn't make sense to stay.
Love that. Yeah. Quality of life.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Danielle. Well, you're the owner and creative director of Richard Creative. So tell me about Richard Creative, if you could, and some of the different services you offer today.
Yeah. So Richard Creative is a small graphic design company. And so we do anything from designing ads or graphics for social media, billboards, banners, annual reports. But then we also do things like we design and art direct Lola magazine, which has just come back. We have new ownership, and we just sent our last issue to press last week, so it was very exciting. But then we build websites a lot, and we do a ton of work for like the city, the parish. In fact, yesterday I put the YMCA logo on something for the Parks Department, the parish Parks Department. They were talking about the pickleball court that they're, the complex that they're, working on now. So I get to work with a ton of cool businesses here in the area and learn about what they're doing and learn about, how they operate. And that's always a fun part of graphic design for me, is not just like helping communicate things, but learning about different industries and people and things like that.
Yeah, you're one of the more inquisitive people I know, and one of the more curious people I know, and that's always really inspired me whenever I've had the opportunity to interact with you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, there's something about learning new information that's kind of, I think, the magic for what I do and what keeps things interesting and keeps me from getting bored. I'm a neurodivergent person. I think there's some ADHD in there. And so if things are very repetitive, it's not going to hold my interest. So getting to learn about different people and how different things work and connecting different people, and collaborations, that's what it's all about.
I agree. I'm stimulated in very similar ways.
Cool.
Well, you've studied social systems and written an extremely thoughtful book entitled System Redesign Handbook for Humane Error, Harnessing 12,000 Years of Knowledge to Edit Systems for Human Thriving. Maybe you actually brought a copy today.
Yes, so it's official.
Yep. And I read the entire book. Highly recommend it. Tell me, my question for you is tell me some of the things you conclude that make a system more humane.
Thank you for the question. And this is something that I love to talk about. I could nerd out on it for a while, but
please do.
So in studying systems, and especially human-made systems, right? So any of the things that people think of, that's what I'm trying to kind of tackle. Some of them work really well. Some of them work not so well. So I got to kind of looking, okay, how can we kind of define this and try to pick good ones?
So just for people going, what's a human-made system? Maybe define that real fast, or provide some
examples, right? So the biggies that I talk about in the book are the education system, our political system, even just capitalism in general. Like money is a system. People invented that. Money isn't something that like animals and nature know about, right? So all of the things that people make up, sort of the collective illusions in society and
days of the week.
Exactly, right? Like it wasn't a foregone conclusion that we would have 7 days of the week. That was invented, a couple thousand years ago. So even things like the calendar, how we have 12 months in a year and none of them are exactly the same number of days, like that's very human invention, right? So if a human invented it, I feel like it should be fair game for us to edit it if it's not working well for us, right? So kind of the thing that got me into all of this is looking at the education system specifically. So right now, it's a very complicated system. It all works by these, grouping kids by age and having them all take the same subjects. And there's so many different rules and frameworks around it that we don't question, right? So if we were to question that, how would we improve it, right? What would we do better? And it turns out a lot of the things that make systems work well goes back to what works well for nature. So nature automatically produces complex adaptive systems. there's lots of moving parts, lots of variables, but they're never set in stone the way a lot of our systems are today, right? We have whole user manuals and documents and things that say, no, it has to be done this way. Well, let's continue to evolve those things. Things are constantly changing. Our environment is constantly changing. Our resources tend to change and like the way we think about things. And so I feel like systems that are constantly changing to work for us instead of against us are the way to go. And systems that prioritize human health and well-being are kind of key. So if we prioritize profit or attendance or whatever arbitrary thing in a system, that's going to kind of cause things to go wonky. They're not going to work out as well for humans as maybe they could. So letting systems change, helping systems change, letting systems prioritize human health and well-being, and setting a purpose for a system are all biggies that I think would serve us all really well. So if our purpose is human health and well-being, and not profit or any other arbitrary thing, that can really help us make decisions in a way that isn't as arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell people just while we're on the book and on systems, just where people would find the book today.
Yeah, so I have a website, system-redesign.org, or the book is available on Amazon. So you can buy it in paperback or hardcover on Amazon or ebook, whatever your particular choice might be there. They're all available on Amazon.
And I assure you, if you read, it's about 200 pages long. If you read it, I promise you there will be mega food for thought. So there will be several times while reading it where you go, I've never thought about it that way, or I've never, that's new to me. And so it was very refreshing for me in that respect. Reading
cool. That was kind of the purpose of it. I don't think a lot of people question things on a regular basis. It's just human nature. You kind of continue along like you've always been. But as I was starting to question things and reading, this is all information that I've read from other people. None of this is like anything I've discovered. But I wanted to kind of put it all in one spot and have it all gelled together to share that experience. Because if I haven't rethought, institutions in that way, I know nobody else has, right? So let's all kind of take a step back and go, wait a second, is this really working for us? Because if not, I have ideas. Let's make it better, And
in that respect, there is a reference section at the end of the book we were talking about before we started. Mm-hmm. You can see some of the things that Danielle has read. There's a vast amount of different books that are cited. So that in and of itself is super interesting. Just go to the back of the book and see all these different books that informed and colored Danielle's thinking as she embarked on writing this book.
Yeah, thanks. I was, really excited to provide that part because that's how I learn, right? Listening to podcasts and audiobooks and learning from other people. I'm constantly going, oh wait, they have a book. Let me see what, do a deep dive on that and learn more about that. So that was kind of the idea. If any of these ideas kind of spark interest or you think, oh wait, that could be useful in my life or my system or whatever, then I love providing the little nugget for you to go off and learn more yourself.
Yeah, I love that too.
Thanks.
All right, well, I'm going to lean on you a little bit for this next question. So very few people would argue about what I'm about to say. We have a sprawl issue in this community. So from your perspective and based on everything you know today and everything you've read and everything you've thought about, talk to me about some of the ways we can begin getting our core more densely populated.
Oh, that's the $1 million question, right? our core more densely populated. That, if we could do that, I think would solve so many problems that Shreveport has, right? I think that's what everybody in Shreveport needs to be focused on, in my opinion. In Shreveport right now, about 1 in 5 properties are vacant, which really harms us as far as having enough resources to care for all of the things that we've built already, right? If you have a street and only 4 out of 5 homes are filled, you're missing 1/5 of the tax base, right? Of the people that can contribute there. So learning from other people, I have found there are ways to target infill development. And infill development is such a not fun term. You don't really I didn't really understand what it meant when I first heard it. But
and you're saying
infill. INFILL.
Okay.
So filling in those vacant properties is basically, what that is talking about. It's a good word, to Google because you'll learn more about it, but the term itself doesn't really explain what it is. But in essence, I feel like our task right now as a city is to put back in all of our vacancies, put back in the level of density that we had before about 1950. So in big cities, they'd call that pre-war. In New York, you've got pre-war buildings and that sort of thing. So the pre-1950s era of Shreveport, if we could get that amount of people living in our urban core, we'd have plenty of funds. We'd have plenty of budget for the things that are important to us, right? And that's
so what you're saying. Let me just clarify. So what you're saying is pre-Second World War, around the time of the Second World War, we were a densely populated city.
And actually, I made this graphic. I'll share it with you so you could put it online. But, in about the 1950s, we had about 5,300 people per square mile. We were a much smaller city, but we had a pretty dense population. And as we move forward on our timeline and we start to be more car-centric, every city in America is like this. Shreveport's not unique, so I'm not trying to knock us for how things went back then. Everybody was doing this, but we get more car-centric. We have more interstates kind of going through the city, and it just breaks people apart, right? Because we can drive, we build so that we have to drive. And so that's kind of where we've come today. We only have about 1,700 people per square mile.
That's amazing. I've never seen that graphic.
Right.
Do you have any ideas? I know you've thought a lot about this. You've looked at a lot of other cities around. I know we don't want density per se Manhattan, but when you look at a healthy city in terms of its population density, what would that be? Is it 5,300 per square mile? Is it 4,000 per square mile? And what is a city that you look at maybe across the country and go, that's healthy in terms of how it's populated?
I don't know that there are a ton of American cities that I could point to as success stories necessarily. There's one city in Florida called Seaside that was built on purpose to be dense and not car-centric. So that's kind of an anomaly. But there are a ton of European cities that didn't get the car fever like we did in the United States. And so you can kind of point to their trajectories. Even the city of Amsterdam used to have way more interstates and freeways and was real car-centric, but they've dialed that back and have reclaimed a lot of that space. And now it's way more walkable, user-friendly and that sort of thing. So to put a target or a goal on things, I would say this 5,300 is about what works for Shreveport. It worked for us then. So in this location, I feel like that would also be the right goal to try to get back to.
And this reclaiming process, is that something that numerous cities across the country are going through, we got too spread out. There's too much sprawl. We need to re-engineer, reverse this process.
Right. Yeah. A lot of cities are, not as many as I would hope, but the ones who have visionary leadership and are able to get some like momentum going in that, they are very much. And there's tons of examples nearby. Dallas actually has completely turned one of their overpasses in downtown into a park, right? Like at some point you just get too much concrete and too many roads that it just forces out the people. And the people are the things that pay taxes and fund the whole thing. So if you're not able to have enough people in an area, you're never going to be able to afford the upkeep on the roads and things that you build. So,
and what about like when I hear a term such as insolvent city? Like, talk to me a little bit about like how some of this ties into potentially being insolvent as a city or as a place.
Yeah, that's a biggie, because everything we build, it's not, we think about it as sort of being an investment and a thing that will earn us money in the future. But as a city, as we build infrastructure, every foot of street that we build also comes with the water underneath, the sewer service, the garbage service, police and fire. Like there's so much as a city that comes along with everything that we build that it just gets more and more expensive the more we build. And we don't necessarily think about when we build it, how much it's going to cost to maintain it over time. So it's almost one of those things where I want to say, oh, we want to build a new whatever. We need to put back the funds in order to be able to maintain that over time. It's not going to fund itself unless we have a ton of people there to fund it for us, to contribute, right? Just building it does not mean it will be profitable, if that kind of makes sense.
And an insolvent city is really a city that's gotten upside down in this process, that's gotten to a point where it can no longer maintain all that it has and all that it's built.
That's right. And unfortunately, that's kind of where Shreveport is right now. If you look at those numbers, we had last year, or maybe 2 years ago, a company called Urban 3 come in and do a big study, looked at all of the pluses and minuses as it relates to Shreveport and what we have to spend and what we're owed. And we're kind of at that point. We're underwater, so to speak. We've managed to kind of make things work okay with some bonds and some things like that will tide us over a little bit. But if we keep this trajectory of spreading out and building more while losing population, like we are, that's a recipe that math doesn't math, right? Like we're going to run out of funds and get to the point where we're not able to provide police and fire to the point where it's healthy for us, right? Like if people get spread too thin, there's no way we can cover everything that we would like to as a city.
Why do you think, I think it's fascinating. I actually think it's stimulating. I think it's interesting. Like, why don't we hear more about this why doesn't the media delve more into this? Or why isn't this more a part of our daily or weekly conversation? Like, why aren't more people concerned and engaged with this fight?
That's something I've thought a lot about and really looked into a lot. And I think it really comes down to it's kind of boring. It's not sexy. It's not, the things that I'm advocating for are small, incremental changes over time, like one thing building on another, iterative processes. That's not bright and shiny. It's not something that would be a campaign slogan, right? You won't hear anybody running for mayor that says, no silver bullets, only very small, lots of small bets everywhere. That just doesn't sell well, And it's one of those things that it takes attention over time, right? It's most people everywhere, not just in Shreveport, are struggling, right? Are living their daily lives, have so much going on that they're like required to keep up with, and things get thrown at them, and just your day to day. Oh my God, now I've got to call a plumber, right? Like there's so much going on. You don't have time to take a step back and say, oh, let's look at the health of our city, which is a very nebulous and kind of hard thing to quantify. So it being sort of a boring, tedious, unsexy topic, I think, is what has challenged the media to really cover it in a way that I think we should, right?
That makes total sense to me. All right. Well, in your book, you look at systems and explain, as you said earlier, that we made them all up as humans, and so we have the power to unmake them as much as we want. I've heard you through my research and preparing for today. I've heard you talk about things like city building, historic preservation, infrastructure and transportation, planning, and incremental development. And so my question is, in our community, as you look around, as again, just one of our foremost thinkers that I'm aware of and that I know of about community, what systems would you personally prioritize as ripe for a redesign?
All of them? No. I really feel like our education system and our criminal justice system are kind of biggies, and they are unique in that the educational system in particular, we're kind of starting at the root of the problem. So we're not trying to put Band-Aid fixes on things. If we were to really focus our educational system on what works well for the health and well-being of students and nothing else, then that could be really transformative. Right now, our education system nationwide, this isn't unique to Shreveport, really protects the system itself. That's its priority. It's like, well, we couldn't do that because then we wouldn't be able to afford X, Y, and Z. Well, did we really need X, Y, and Z? Or is that a thing that was required? Like, why are we doing this? So setting those priorities in advance, I think, could be really useful. And if we can get the education system going in the right direction, well, that kind of powers everything, right? Those students will grow up having lived whole and healthy lifestyles and will get to adulthood excited to contribute to society, in my head, right? If we were to do this right. And that just makes a huge difference. If you've got a community of people who are healthy and able and resourced and, able to come together as a collaboration, that solves so many problems in general, right?
Tell me, because I remember from reading the book, one point you make in the book that I thought was really interesting is that you make a case, or at least open for conversation, the idea of mixing students from different ages together. Talk a little bit about that, and maybe some other things that you think the education system at least should explore as a whole, or as a new direction for the system itself.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point. I don't necessarily recommend making changes to the whole system at a time, right? So let's do little trials. Let's do little iterative things. And so the things that I would want to change and kind of start with there are grouping kids not by age. So right now, we're very much on a conveyor belt system, right? Like it's down to the day you were born, which grade you start, when you start pre-K or kindergarten. But if you look at, 12,000 years ago is kind of where our brains evolved to be best in. So if you look at how people lived about 12,000 years ago, it was not grouped by age at all. Like little kids would learn from the, 5 or 6 year olds who would learn from the middle school aged kids, and they wound up kind of looking out for each other, right? The older kids kind of keep the little kids in line, and the little kids, it's funny if you start to look for this, they really latch onto and learn from other kids better than adults, right? So if I'm
and progress at a healthier pace because they're pushing themselves to keep up with the older kids.
Exactly.
There's an example in your book. I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank now, but there's an example of something in your book where there's a young person who's unable to do something until they're matched with someone much older and they're watching them do that and wanting to mimic it.
That happened with my son when he was a toddler, or maybe not even a toddler, maybe younger than that. And it's kind of, you start to look at everything with new eyes when you have kids. I don't remember learning this, but when you're little bitty, you don't have good dexterity in your fingers. He couldn't pick up Cheerios off of his high chair tray. Like, we were still having to kind of get it to his mouth. But his older cousin was 2 years older, and she's, in his mind, just the best thing ever. I mean, she's talking and she's walking and she's doing all the cool things. And look at her, she's putting her Cheerios in her mouth. And he's like, and then all of a sudden he's doing it himself, right? Whereas I, the whole time I've been a parent to him, have been trying to teach him these things. All Avery had to do was just do it. And he watched and was like, oh, I can do that too. So, it takes so much less effort. And kids are excited. It's intrinsically motivating rather than it being something that I'm trying to impart upon him, which makes it, I don't know, so much more pleasant and happy of an experience.
Yeah, I thought that was incredible. So aside from that, give me I don't know if you can, 2 or 3 other tweaks or changes you would love to see us at least explore nationwide with respect to the system of education.
Absolutely. So aside from grouping people not by age, but maybe by interest or level or whatever, having personal autonomy, I think, could be huge. So right now, every kid in, say, 3rd grade has to take the same subjects, the same everything. They have to go to the same PE class once a week, your music class once, they have no say-so whatsoever in what it is they get to do, which now, we're used to that. That's kind of what we expect. But if you let a kid choose what it is that they want to learn, I mean, there can be no stopping them. If I look at what my kids are into, they will learn something inside and out and backwards and forwards before I can even figure out what it is they're trying to learn. If it's something they want to do, it just happens so naturally and easily and in a positive way. So maybe let them choose. Do I want to, this year, not just electives, not just kind of false choices, but let them choose. Oh, well, I'm really interested in, video editing or game design or whatever it is. Let them pursue that. And along the way, they will learn so much more than you could have ever planned to give them. So personal autonomy would be a biggie.
How would that work? Would that be, let the kid consult with the parents and let the parents kind of, knowing what they know about their kids, help guide what classes their kids take? I mean, it's not just a kid speaking for themselves. It's parents have to be involved in this process too, particularly for a 2nd or 3rd grader, right?
Right. And the school has to be flexible as well. They have to offer different things when it comes to that kind of thing. So I definitely see it as
that from the very beginning. You believe it?
Absolutely. And we're all so different, and we're all motivated by such different things. I think even as very small children, giving them some choices is going to be really useful and impactful.
Just being devil's advocate, what do you say to someone who says, well, what they really love or what they're really interested in, they don't even know yet because they haven't been exposed to it yet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a biggie. But I think it's our job as adults to offer lots of different options, right? To show what is possible and what what they are capable of. I don't think narrowing down your focus as a small child is going to hurt in the long run, right? I'm not saying you study this one thing to the exclusion of everything else, but along the way, I've seen tons of examples in different settings, alternative school settings. If you get a kid who's really excited about putting together an aquarium, was one example that I read about. So they were like, yes, absolutely, aquarium, that's what we're all about here. And so the kid did so much research on what type of aquarium and what went well in there and what, went well together. And then it got to the point where they wanted to set up a GoFundMe, and they had to do all this writing. And before you know it, you're getting the kid to do math and research and English, all because of one intrinsically motivated thing, right? So instead of kind of like shoving all the topics down their throat, let them discover them on their own. And there's no stopping them. Like, he was excited to write instead of like, another essay, So I that kind of thing, I think, would be super exciting. And as a kid, I would have loved to have been able to choose, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got, allowing kids of different ages to learn together, giving students much more autonomy as they move through the school system. Give me maybe one other one.
One more that sounds insane, and everybody who hears it goes, what? But let's cut out grades, letter grades, right? So in some alternative schooling environments, it works out really well to just have completion. So you're not trying to compete against anyone else. You're competing against yourself and things that you've learned, and you've either learned it or you haven't, right? Like, there's no shame. And if you decide to bail, I'll go learn something else, right? Like, if we get rid of the A, B, C, D, F situation that's happening now, it's way more fulfilling and motivating to learn. So grades really only came about in America in like the late 1800s, early 1900s is when they start to show up. That's a very recent invention, right? I don't think that's necessary for all schools going forward.
I don't think it's crazy.
Well, it's crazy when you think about the way things are structured now. Like,
sure,
everything is about GPA and your rank, and that leads to, it's a big thing. Like, if you don't have the GPA, you won't get into it's all of these things piled on. So it feels a little crazy to say the base of what we're doing needs to go away, but it's totally possible. People have proven it in smaller environments and in bigger cohorts as well. It's just the systems that we have set up now don't really allow for it. So there again, let's rethink that.
And that's what I love so much about Danielle's book, is it's much of what we've just been talking about. It's her stepping back, trying to see the big picture and going, okay, we're doing this a certain way. Is this the best way? And if it's not, what are better ways?
Exactly.
And looking at so many different aspects of our lives and going, just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it has to always be that way.
Absolutely. And another thing that I think is really empowering about the way I'm thinking about this, I'm not criticizing any human ever. When I'm saying our education system and our criminal justice system needs work, that is not to say the people in charge of those systems are wrong. They are also part of this system. They didn't invent it. It was here before they were even born. I truly am critiquing the system itself. I think every person and really every city department, every structure, system everywhere, every person is really giving it their best. And they are trying to do the best for the people, in front of them. Every teacher gives so much more than what they're paid for, right? So being able to critique the system and not the people, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah, and I think to your earlier point, these teachers or these administrators or these judges or these people on the police force or fire, they're just in survival mode. They've got so many things just to get through the day, just to accomplish what they're being tasked with. they don't have enough time to kind of step back and reflect on, well, how do I make these big global changes to the system that I'm in and that I've inherited?
Exactly. They are just trying to get through what's in front of them.
Yeah.
And which is absolutely what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of weird and I like to step back and look at the big picture.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, Danielle, those are my set questions today. Like I told you, I mean, by no means is today going to be an exhaustive account of all things Danielle Richard, but I'm happy if there's anything else you want to get into or share. I find your lens very refreshing, very unique and original. So if there's anything else that you want to talk about, by all means.
Well, I think you hit most of it, but I will say I'll add one more number at the end here. Richard Creative helped with the One Shreveport Master Plan update recently. And so that's also been a huge area I've gotten to learn a lot from, how the city works and kind of the way it maybe doesn't work for a lot of people. One of the most interesting numbers that I've learned out of that process, Shreveport gains about 25,000 people every day when they come to work. So if we were able to do some of that infill, you know, take the 1 out of 5 properties that are vacant, if we were able to put in some housing that is appropriate for the neighborhood and would be a great place to live, that's 25,000 people that could move here and wouldn't have to commute in to work every day. Although our population is declining, we have potential. We have a ton of potential. And those vacant lots are part of that potential. So,
say that stat again. Let me make sure. Say that again.
20,
I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, well, and that's why I checked my numbers this morning to make sure. 25,000 people come into Shreveport every day to go to work that don't already live in Shreveport. So they live maybe further out in the parish or in Bossier or someplace like that. Although those people don't live here, we can't count them as residents. We know that they're at least willing to come to Shreveport to work. So if we were to provide a great place for them to live that's affordable and all of those good things, we can easily gain more people. It's not a foregone conclusion that our population will continue to decline, which is kind of cool. And also, if you try to look at doing infill development to, you know, eliminate our vacancies, the ones that would give us the best return on investment are the oldest ones, the core urban middle of the city spots. That's where most of our vacancies are, but that's where our best return on investment will be. So if we could get a ton of people doing incremental infill development, that's a ton of profit just waiting to be made, right? And profit in service of providing a great place to live for people in our community. So that's kind of one of those win-win things. If we could get a big focus on that and get just an army of people, small builders and things like that, not big apartment buildings, but things that fit in with the character of your community, that's kind of where the magic can happen. So one of our biggest sort of downsides, all those vacancies, is our biggest opportunity as a city. So that's something that I'm kind of excited to hopefully put some effort and motivation into in the coming years and kind of see how that goes.
I'm going to ask you one other thing that I read or I saw a graphic or I heard you talk about. One emphasis of your book and one emphasis of your work is kind of start with the most vulnerable. Make sure that whatever solution you're providing fits the most vulnerable person in our community. And there was some example, I think it was like a snow-covered school entrance and stairs and a ramp. And share a little bit of that or paint that picture if you could, because I thought it was really powerful.
Oh, I'd love to. So it's kind of a meme that gets shared around a lot in sort of neurodivergent moms communities, like on Facebook. I see this come up a lot. It's a cartoon of a bunch of kids standing outside a library, and it's been a snow day, which is not something we're familiar with here, but you can kind of follow along. You can get that. There's a kid in a wheelchair who's asking the custodian to clear the ramp so he can get in, and he's like, no, I got to get these stairs cleared off first. Like, this is my job. I got to get the stairs. And he's like, but if you just clear the ramp, then it works for everybody, right? The stairs only work for able-bodied people. So that really applies to a lot of how we build things and how we structure things.
And how we solve problems.
Another number that kind of applies here, 30% of the population of the world either cannot or doesn't want to drive a car. Not everybody is able-bodied and able to drive a car. Not even afford. We're not even talking about money, but just physically able to. So because we've built our cities to where you're kind of required to drive a car to get around, that leaves 30% of the population out of the equation. And that just feels mean to me, right? If we were to, as we do infill and as we plan for this, make sure that our sidewalks are walkable and our streets aren't going to kill people because they're trying to cross them, right? Like, that should be the priority. Let's plan for every human. Because, like, right now, I'm totally able-bodied. I can go up and down the stairs just fine, but I assume kind of as I get older, my mobility is going to decline. Any one of us could, sprain an ankle or something, or have periods where driving is just not an option. And in a city built like this, and every American city is built like this, you're kind of screwed. You can't get in a car and drive around if you're injured or blind, or, there's so many things that play into that. If you look at the population as a group, it just makes sense to say, okay, this 30% is who we should plan for. That way, everybody can access our city and our amenities, and not to the exclusion of driving. Let's have both, right? I want to have choices. I want to be able to drive everywhere I want to, but let's don't make that our only option. Let's make it walkable and drivable. And so planning for the most vulnerable first makes sense in my head to kind of structure those things.
Yeah, mine too.
Cool.
Well, Danielle, anything else?
I mean, that is a lot of big numbers and big questions.
We nerded out a little bit.
We did, but I
can't keep up with you, but I try.
Oh, man.
And I do love the things that you think about and the things that you try to get others to think about.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. I love getting to nerd out on stuff from time to time.
Well, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Of course.